So you got a lot of MFE ears here to answer your questions, and really, wanted to create this night just not only to give you all more information about the grants because they're new, and we know that there are many folks already working on applications. We've received a few. We'll share a little bit about those later tonight. But also wanted to give you all a sense of, why the board created these and a little bit of their vision for that. And also to create some space for folks who are already thinking about these ideas to have some opportunity to talk to other people in their school communities. So we'll end the evening with a breakout session to allow you all to do that. Dory, do you want to kick off that first slide just so that I don't miss anything? So want to just give you a little bit of an overview of what this session will look like. We'll leave the first few minutes really to give some information about, like I said, about the grants, the backgrounds, a little bit more nitty gritty on the process and the procedure that we're following for the review. We'll then move into a Q&A where you all can ask questions of the board members. And then at that, kind of midway through, leave about 30 minutes for you all to really be in your breakout sessions. And before we get to that, we'll explain a little bit about how those will work. And then we'll bring everybody back to the main room. So we'll have 10 minutes where if other questions came up in your breakout rooms, we can do, answer a few more and then give you some information about how to continue to reach out to us if you need more information. I also just want to give a little note. As I said, we launched the grants in, I believe it was mid-November. So we do have some proposals. We've already received some proposals. So it may be that, we've already gotten a proposal from your school. That doesn't mean that we won't entertain other ideas, not at all. And we'll share a little bit about some of the proposals we've already received, but please note that this is not just because your school may have already submitted as a proposal doesn't mean that your ideas can't be connected with those proposals or that you can submit something that is in addition to what's already been submitted. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our board member, David Caldwell, who's going to give you a little bit of some background around how the grants were developed and a little bit of MFE's visions and hopes for them. Take it away, David.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you, I guess, are getting all those extra carbs out of your system by now from Thanksgiving. But yeah, to talk about these grants, they're very important to us. And it was a journey that got us to this point. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with our America to Me program, but our America to Me program was designed to take a look at a Chicago public school in the suburbs of Chicago that mirrored a lot of the things that Montclair High School students go through. And it allowed us to kind of take a look at ourselves without, looking at ourselves, because sometimes that's an easier approach to solving a lot of the same issues that we have and just recognizing a lot of those issues. So the initial step for our journey of America to Me was to, it's one thing to know a problem exists, but it's a whole nother thing to gain an understanding for that problem. And once you gain that understanding, it allowed us to see very clearly the root of those problems and what exactly caused those issues. So from the MFEE America to Me that we did just within our group to the community-wide rollout, it was a learning experience amongst everybody. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was, okay, we recognize the problems, we understand the problems, we understand the root of the problems. Now, what's that next step to taking those actionable items within the community and within ourselves to actually make these changes? And what was very important for us to do is to not just create a program on our own and say, okay, this is what we're doing and this is what's gonna, solve the racial issues in Montclair. We knew that that wouldn't be the right approach. And we wanted to make sure that everybody was invested in solving this issue together, because just truth be told, that's the only way that it's actually gonna get solved. It's not just a one group issue. It's a group that, it's an issue that everybody can, help to solve. So now that we had the America to Me program, we decided to create these equity grants, and we wanted each school to take ownership as well as the community to take ownership. And you guys kind of give us some ideas on the experiences that you're going through, as well as some of the solutions that students and teachers and principals, staff across the board will really adopt and really use to solve a lot of these issues. We all know that there's been an achievement gap for a very long time, socioeconomic problem with race, resources across the board. So there's all these different, things that we need to address. And these grants, we want to, not only just talk about the issue, but really put our money where our mouth is to actually solving it. So that's where we are. As you guys can see, the grants are clearly to address racial and socioeconomic inequity. They're one-time grants for across the board for all the public schools, with the high school getting up to $50,000. So there's a huge commitment that it wasn't just, and I don't want anybody to think that it's just like, oh, we had some money left over, so let's just throw it at these issues. This is something that we're fully invested in. Obviously, you all are too. I see all the participants that are here. I recognize some of the faces that have been here throughout the entire process. So this is, our way of saying, hey, we want everybody to kind of join this party and to take ownership in really addressing these issues. And we're looking for, an entire community-wide approach to solving these problems that are in our community to help benefit everybody. So sorry for talking too long, but hopefully, you got the overview of the equity grants as well as where they came from.
Awesome, David. Thank you so much. And David is, I don't know if you mentioned that, David is an alum of Montclair High School. We are so lucky to have him on our board.
And his mother is a retired Northeast second grade teacher, Karen Caldwell.
Indeed. So we've got deep roots in the school community. Thank you, Noah. I'm going to turn it over to Desiree Burgos, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the project expectations. So Desiree, if you want to jump in.
Yep, I'm right here. So as Marcial said, my name is Desiree Burgos. I am going to talk to you about project expectations. The projects that you are going to be generating ideas for can be executed through 2021 through 2022. So it's not something that needs to happen immediately now. So it's the 2021-2022 school year, or it can happen earlier. Whichever is going to generate the best outcomes is what we're looking for there. Know that teachers, administrators, PTAs, groups of parents, and other stakeholders may apply. So it's not just limited to teachers in the schools. MFEE does not have preconceived projects in mind. We want you to really just focus on generating ideas. We're looking to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're getting the greatest collaboration across all of our stakeholder groups. And we want to incorporate as much as the community voice as possible, because that's going to ensure the greatest diversity. So we want to make sure that you know that. We have a date deadline of December 14th, but know that that's a rolling time frame. So we're going to try to be as flexible as possible with that. So take your time to really just think about big picture possibilities. And if your grant has to come in after that time frame, we'll try to figure out how we can make that work. In addition, we want to make sure that we're encouraging your big ideas. We really, and we can't elaborate this enough. We are really excited to hear about your ideas. We want you to think big, so do that. And you're also welcome to collaborate with other schools, and know that it's okay that you have the same idea as someone else or another school. That's okay, because at the end of the day, we can take those ideas and maybe encourage some groups to work together if the ideas are that similar. So know that as well. Again, this is idea sharing and development. We're not rigid about the launch date, so know that as well. But if you have a project that can start earlier and it's going to have the greatest opportunity for the best outcome, and that means that starting earlier is going to allow that, and definitely that's something that we would encourage you doing. And that's pretty much what I have for the project expectations.
Thank you, Desiree. Thank you so much. And so we're going to move on into our next board member, Sarah Hudson-Plush, who's going to walk us through a little bit more of the nitty gritty. So Dory, if you can switch to the next slide, that would be fantastic. So we've got Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Hudson-Plush. I'm going to speak with you about the process and timeline for applying for our equity grants. So this process kicks off by submitting a letter of intent. This is on MFEE's website now. And that letter of intent is your opportunity to get your ideas on paper. This doesn't have to be a fully fleshed out idea. We want to know what you're thinking at this point. Some of the questions, as you'll see when you access the letter of intent, that we're going to be asking about are the need for the project, your target population, a description of what you intend to do, how you plan to measure impact, who you'll collaborate with, who else in your school community, and your proposed budget. And at this point, again, we're just looking for sort of your basic idea. As Desiree mentioned, we have a priority deadline for Monday, December 14th to receive your letters of intent, so just under 2 weeks. And after that, it's a rolling basis. So ideally, you can get this into us by the 14th. If it's a little bit later, we're going to still look at it. After submitting the letter of intent, we'll be in touch with you regarding the status of your proposal. There might be some instances when we're denying a proposal outright because it really doesn't fit within our funding parameters. But most likely, in most instances, it's going to be the start of a conversation between us, MFAE, and you, the applicant, where we're asking you for more information. We're helping you flesh out your idea. We're maybe putting you in touch with people at other schools who have similar ideas. So there could be some space for collaboration. And then ultimately, we'll be asking for some type of full application proposal. And applications will be considered on a rolling basis. And as Desiree also mentioned, we anticipate most projects will take place next school year. So you can use the winter and the spring to plan. But we recognize there may be instances where you really want a project to start this school year, and we're open to that as well. I think we can move on to our next slide, Dory. Looking at the selection criteria, what we're going to be looking at when we receive your proposals. First and foremost, does it address racial and or socioeconomic inequity in the schools? Is the project doable? So is it realistic given the budget and time frame? And aside from the grant money, are there sufficient resources available to execute it? For example, is there sufficient staff or parents available at the school to execute the idea that you proposed? Will this project have an impact? And how are you going to measure that impact? We're thinking about the number of individuals affected. Is it scalable? Is it sustainable? In other words, how many people will it reach? And is it a one-time program or project? Or is it something where we can extend the reach of the project to future years or future students to benefit? And lastly, was the proposal collaboratively shaped by a diverse group of school stakeholders, including but not limited to teachers, administrators, parents, and students where applicable? We're keenly interested in you having buy-in from a large swath of the school community. And I think that's all I have.
Great. So as I said, I'm really grateful that we have so many of our board members present. I know that a couple people joined, our co-president, David Oscar, as well as another board member, Tawana Turner-Jones, and our new admin coordinator, Najla Nazimuddin. So like I said, there's so many of us here. We're going to make everyone available to be with you in the breakout rooms when we move to that, if you want. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for right now, I know we kind of threw out a lot of information, and we have received some questions from folks when they register. So we can go through those maybe at the end and start to open up. We're seeing some questions in the chat. We thought we would go ahead and just open up the questions, and people can do it with their mics just by raising your hand. If you can find that in the I know we're all very getting better at Zoom, but if you go into your to the participants, you can, and then click on the little more, you can is that way actually Dory, I need your help.
I think that might, I think if Yeah, if people can either raise their hands physically, because I can see a lot of folks on my screen,
perfect.
and I will call on you, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name, or you can raise your hand for a question. And what I will be doing also, if folks want to post questions in the chat box, whatever we don't get to in this conversation, we will save the chat and address them at some point. And I'm just going to say that what I'll be trying to do is calling on giving every person a chance to ask a question once before I go back to someone for a second question. And then I think I'm just going to ask the board members to take themselves off mute so they can answer the questions as they come up, and ask other folks to keep themselves on mute until you ask your question. Thank you all. So the first hand I saw go up was, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, Itai Denor.
Yep. Hi. Thanks so much. Are you all engaging with teachers and administrators in parallel to this conversation? Is it possible they're submitting their own ideas at the same time, or should we be intentionally reaching out to them if we have ideas, if they're not on the call tonight?
Sarah, do you want to take that one?
I would say both. We definitely have teachers and administrators who are applying. So the more you can be in conversation with them, the better. And I think probably any project that is funded is going to have some school buy-in, even if it's coming exclusively from parents. You know, the teachers and principals will have to know what's happening. So I would encourage you to be in touch. And yes, and some of those applications are coming to us already from staff and teachers, administrators.
Thank you. The next hand I see up is Noah's.
So one, I wanted to say happy 30th anniversary coming up in 2021 to MFE. MFE was founded in 1991, which means it's 2021, which is soon. It'll be 30 years since MFE was founded by Joyce Michelson, so we'll have to do something about that. Anyway, two, so I wanted to know if there'll be any more MFE virtual events going on. Like we just had our show up on our Open Hearts thing, our show up Montclair in this past fall in November, a month ago already. And we want to know if there's going to be some more like virtual fun MFE events where the town can participate in.
Yes, in May.
Cool,
So
what is it?
stay tuned. Fundraiser 4.0, but we'll get to that later because we want to focus on the equity grant.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Noah.
Noah. So there was a question posted in the chat, which is Gina asked if it's possible to get a document or some sort of history of what's been implemented in the district, or things that have been tried and probably may or may not have worked, or any existing efforts. So I'm curious if any of the board members, I don't know if that's something MFE could provide, but if there are places we can point people to, or how we might be able to provide that kind of historical context.
Right. We can definitely give an overview of just some of the programs with the people that we've spoken to, whether it's tutoring programs or anything else. This probably is a little bit unique in how it's being rolled out, just as far as community wide, but we can definitely give you a list of the programs that are designed and have been designed to kind of, solve a lot of these issues, or at least help them. We can give you a list to kind of give you some ideas. And then maybe we can kind of, if we do something similar, we can hopefully have a little bit more buy-in, like Sarah just said, as far as, with the principals, with the superintendent. So even though something was already been done, you can still kind of do it in a different way.
Okay, great. Sorry, David.
I'm just going to jump in. I think, as David said, so we're in conversation also with Dr. Pons and Dr. Morgan around the equity grants, and with principals and administrators who have been in the district much longer than Dr. Morgan and Dr. Pons. So, we're kind of sharing ideas, and that's something that we can, put together. I think it may not be the most exhaustive list, but we can certainly kind of maybe do a quick outline that would give a little bit of some background on things that have worked. So I think, Gina, that's a really good point.
Actually, Ms. Kirkman just announced her retirement.
Thank you, Noah. So I want to get to the next question in the list. So Nancy asks, what kinds of items do you allow or expect in proposed budgets? And I'm going to also pull from some of the questions that were submitted that are along the same lines. Like, for example, will grants pay for trips for teachers? Could they pay for a class set of books? Could they pay for teacher trainings? So if one of the board members could speak to the items that you would allow or expect in proposed budgets.
I would say definitely yes on books, yes on teacher trainings. Dory, what was the other one you mentioned in the list?
I believe also class trips for teachers.
I think it would depend on what that was. If it was part of a professional development retreat, maybe. We'd have to see what it was.
Just to add on, I think the best approach is, throw everything out there. Don't shut down an idea because you don't think that it's, something that, would get approved, but throw it out there and let's see what happens,
And the only other thing I would add on that is that I know we had a question about the class sets of books. And just to distinguish the equity grant a little bit from our educational excellence grants, which that really is something that's in that lane, kind of class sets of books for smaller group discussions or maybe for a few classrooms. Those are the ideas that we typically fund under our educational excellence grants. Not to say that they don't have a place in this grant program, but the goal here is really to think really about a kind of a deeper, more strategic, broader impact. So just to give you a little sense.
And I will add that you'll be moving into breakout rooms soon. And so if in your breakout room, you and your group would like to ask more specific questions about ideas you have, you can have one of the board members join you. And if you have specific items you want to discuss, we can do that. So I'm going to jump ahead to ROA's question, which is, can we submit joint proposals with other schools?
Yes.
That was a solid yes.
Yeah, and a little bit of also, like as Sarah said earlier, we're already seeing some of the proposals that are coming in have some similar focus, like whether it's around teacher training or racial literacy development for students and parents, and so we very much want to kind of connect folks who are interested in similar things to see if there's a way to be strategic across school campuses.
Thank you. Another question that came up, I apologize, I lost my window for a second. Sort of pulling back a little bit, someone had posed the question of how will these grants be leveraged to foster district-wide change and interschool collaboration and promote equity between the schools?
I think what we've been talking about with collaboration and that receiving these grant proposals from the different schools allows us as grantors to see sort of connections and to make connections. So the question that was posed, can we submit a joint proposal? Yes. And we also may see an application and see that something that Northeast is doing is similar to something that Watchung is doing and connect the applicants in that way. To foster sort of broader change across the district where it makes sense, while also giving the schools sort of autonomy to figure out what distinct needs they may have in their own buildings.
Great, thank you. We have a few more minutes for questions if anyone would like to post them in the additional questions in the chat. Dana asks, has a question if the students who led the Unity Walk are applying for a grant, or anyone outside of the individual schools.
Mm-hmm. So just specifically on that end, we are working with Dr. Pons and very early team of staff from the high school, and they're reaching out to students as well to develop a proposal. So I'm excited to say that the students will be involved in shaping those proposals.
Thank you. We have a question from Joe. What is the expected timeline between submitting the LOI and being asked to submit a more detailed grant proposal? And will the larger grant have a firm deadline as well?
Some of this we're still developing as we go. So I'll say that, but we're committed, once you submit an LOI to us, getting back to you within 3 weeks to let you know where you stand. And so that might be, again, saying this isn't a proposal that we're going to be able to move forward with. It might be saying we're very excited about this, but we'd like to know more about X, Y, and Z. It might be this looks very similar to what another school is doing. We're going to put you in touch to talk. So it could be a variety of responses, and we suspect there's going to be a little bit of back and forth between MFEE and the candidates before we finalize something. And we don't have a firm deadline yet for final proposals. In part, we're sort of want to wait and see what schools are going to be proposing to see if some of those collaborations and connections can be made. Do you want to add to that, Maciel?
No, you got it. That's exactly right. And I mean, part of it, as David and Sarah have both said, the notion behind the priority deadline for the 12-14 for the LOI is really to try to flesh out the ideas, right? And as David said earlier, they don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all your numbers crunched. We do want you to give it some thought, enough so that we can have a conversation. And then as Sarah said, we respond to you in 3 weeks. We have the conversation. There's a little back and forth, and then proposals that are promising, we will invite the full application, and that deadline, we'll make sure that it's a deadline that can be met reasonably and give you enough time to submit that.
So a question that came in through the registration process was, if you could share any thoughts on how the various community stakeholders could work collaboratively, so teachers, school administrators, PTAs, parent community, etc. What are you looking for in that?
Do you want to go, Sarah?
I'm sorry, Joy, could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. The question was, the question specifically was, how best can the various stakeholders, PTA, teachers, admin, and the district work together for this grant?
Maciel, do you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. And we're already seeing it in the proposals that are coming in. So, and the how is really up to the folks in the community to kind of do that collaboration, right? We can support and be helpful, but part of the idea here is that, and part of the goal, quite frankly, is to spark these kinds of conversations, to get people to come to the table together. And your schools really well. Maybe there hasn't been this opportunity with, kind of with a great motivator, right? You get some significant funding to support your ideas. We're hoping that that motivation will bring you all out and come together. And how you do it really is up to you. I think the ways that we have seen it is it started either from, and in each school, it's a little different. And with each proposal, it's been a little different. Some start with parents who have, some schools have an equity committee. Maybe it starts out of that. In some other cases, it started from, principals who've been wanting to do this work and have been waiting for some funding to support, particularly like, professional development or training. So it starts with the principal reaching out to other folks in their community. Sometimes it starts with teachers. We've had one proposal that was really championed by a teacher who works really closely with many families who, he sees really need some agency to level the playing field for their children. And so his proposal really grew out of that. And he reached out to counselors, to principals, to other teachers, to parents and families. So the how is gonna look different in every school, but the what, which is the collaboration of multiple voices, is what we're shooting for. I hope that was helpful.
So I think there are like 2 or 3 more questions I want to try to squeeze in before we move into the breakout groups. So the first, there's a question about if you have multiple requests, more requests per school. First, can there be multiple proposals from a single school? And second, if you have more requests from a single school than money allocated, how will you make decisions on what to fund?
There can definitely be multiple proposals per school. You don't have to propose using the full budget, for one thing. So there could be smaller, for example, most of our schools aside from the high school we're anticipating $10,000. There could be a $2,000 or $5,000, et cetera, proposal. If we end up having more requests in terms of going over budget, we would first of all see if there's ways to sort of combine projects. It might be that we get a few projects from a school that really are sort of one project that we can put you together. It might be at the end of the day, we have so many wonderful ideas that we need to seek out other sources of funding, which I don't think is off the table. And that would be an amazing problem for us to have and be able to look for solutions for.
Great. And then I think our final question is from Kayla, which is for inter-school collaborations or district-wide collaborations, how would grant awards be allocated? So for example, would the 10,000 upper limit per school still apply, or would it be per grant?
I think that is something we're sort of still figuring out, in large part based on what we receive, until we sort of know what's in front of us. Yeah, and it's sort of a new idea that's come to us, the sort of district-wide proposals that someone brought to our attention who's on this call, and we think it's a great idea. And we're not exactly sure how the numbers would work, but yeah, Marcia, would you add?
Yeah, no, I think that that's exactly right, because we certainly want to entertain those proposals. And I think, as Sarah said, we'll kind of be looking at them as they come in, because it may be in some cases, either, we may be able to leverage some sort of economies of scale if we're working, kind of with multiple schools, or, trying to impact several students, whatever the resources were that were going to be brought in for one school might be extended to be able to kind of do more. And as Sarah said too, just if there's a case where that kind of collaboration might require even more resources, that's a wonderful problem to have, because then it's, kind of looking for other support. And it's a great thing to pitch to other folks that, this is a united collaborative effort from several schools to try to address issues of race and equity. So, the answer is that we will kind of be looking at that as they come in, but we're pretty confident that, as a group, right, both the applicants and the board, that we can be able to address those as they come in.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think we can move to the breakouts and the discussion.
Okay, sounds great.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dory. Yes.
You want me to introduce that? You were going to introduce that, right?
Oh, yes. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move into our breakout rooms. Our original vision for the breakout rooms that we'd give each school, basically we'd break you all out into your schools so that you have an opportunity to hear from each other if you have ideas or if you have questions. How are we looking on that, Dory, with respect to numbers?
I will look at that right now. Give me a second.
Okay. And while Dory's looking, I'll also let you know, like I said before, we have many MFEE folks on this call, and if it would be helpful to have an MFEE representative in your groups, you can certainly let us know. Once you're in your group, just, is there an easy way to request help, Dory?
Yeah, when you're in your room, there should be a button that shows up that says ask for help. You can also leave the room and come into sort of the main room where we will be, and then we can go back with you.
Right. And so if you make that request, we'll put a board, we'll kind of send a board member or an MFE representative into your room to be there. And also know that, Sarah mentioned, so we have our parameters, but we also know that, we're kind of learning from you all. And so just be patient and gentle with your MFEE rep. If you have a question and they can't answer it right in that moment, they will note it and bring it back to the group, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And I think that was it.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think that there are, every school has at least 2 folks from that school, with the exception of Glenfield and Bradford Nishuin. So they're going to be, Linda and Patty, you're going to be in a room by yourself for just a minute, and then we're going to put you together. So just be patient. But no one should be in a room by themselves. So it just might take us a minute to reassign you.
Awesome.
Great. All right, so I'm going to open all the rooms. And we had set aside 30 minutes for this, Maciel. But if people feel like they want to wrap earlier, that's also okay. You can close your room when you're ready.
Yeah, and if anyone's here, I don't know, Dory, if you already said this,
yeah,
but
I didn't say this
here who is ready, who kind of heard what they needed to hear and really, needs to hop off, this is a good time if you would like to hop off. If not, please join us for as long as you can in a breakout room.
Oh, and of course, Zoom has foiled me, and there are a lot of people who are not assigned. So I'm not sure what's happening.